Welcome to this session looking at describing myself in terms of my appearance for primary French. I'm going to go over the basic vocabulary and activities that you can try in your classroom. So let's get started. A wee bit of a warm-up, something that you could do with your learners. First of all, I'd like you to think about how you would describe your appearance in English. And you might do this as a discussion or as a written brainstorm, as a class on the board or in groups. Good way just to get the learners thinking. Could also link this in with literacy and try and get the learners to identify what type of words they're using. Which ones are nouns, which ones are adjectives, for instance. So you might have things like black hair or tall or I don't know, big nose. It could be anything. The children will come up with all sorts of things, I'm sure. Okay, next, some vocabulary that you need is colours. So you might like to get your learners doing a bit of a revision. You probably will have introduced colours already. So memory master, how many colours can they say or write? Perhaps in a set amount of time if you want to make it competitive. See who can get the most. This could be done in pairs, individually, in groups, and you can get them to share. Could be done as a think, pair, share activity as well. Okay, so hopefully then you'll have a chance to revise colours. Maybe get the children to get their felt tip pens out and say, hold a colour up as you call it. For instance, got bleu, jaune, orange, violet, bleu again, rouge. Now you're not going to need all these colours, but it's good to revise them anyway. Blanc, vert, noir, and something brown. I haven't got anything brown, maybe my hair. So something that's brown, we could say brun, or you can say marron, two different words. Okay. Right, so I think that's enough colours. And can you remember what's special about adjectives in French? This is for you. With older learners, they might remember this. Okay. You might give them a clue. Where do they come in a sentence or in a phrase? For instance, if I was to say a red table or a green table, in French, do we say that? No, we would say a table green or a table red. Une table verte or rouge. Okay, that's the first thing. And second thing, does anybody know how the colour word has to end in French? That's right, we need to put on some extra E's if what we're describing is a feminine noun. So your learners hopefully will have a concept right from the start that all nouns in French are either masculine or feminine. Okay, and feminine ones use the word la or une, and masculine ones use the word, you got it, le or un. And if they're plural and there's more than one of them, we use the word les, and that's for masculine or feminine. And then the colour word has to agree with that. So if you've got a green table, table is feminine, une table, une ends with an E, and we follow that through to the table verte, and that ends with an E. If the colour already ends in an E, like rouge, we don't give it another one. Okay, so they agree with the type of gender of the noun. So let's see what happens when we add in colours with hair and eyes. So j'ai, I have, j'ai, les yeux, répétez, j'ai les yeux, très bien, j'ai les yeux. Notice it's les yeux, it slides together, the Y is like a vowel, and the S becomes like a Z sound, les yeux, les yeux. J'ai les yeux, and then we've got the colours. Notice it's les, L-E-S. Why is it les and not le or la? That's it. You've got two of them, so you make it plural. And just like in English, when we want to make something plural, we add an extra S to the word. So we use S in French for plural too, les. Now, je doesn't have an extra S at the end because it ends in an X. An X and S together just doesn't work. We don't need it. Okay, so we can't have that. So that's an exception to the rule for the noun. Okay, so let's have a look at the colours. Noir, noir, noir. Noir sounds like an NW. Noir. Bleu. I always think of a witch. Noir, noir. Bleu. Bleu, 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 bleu. Jelly in my mouth. Bleu, 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 bleu. Vert. It's green outside. It's lush and green, and the bumblebees are buzzing. Vert, vert. And marron, marron, marron. Now, what do you notice about these colours? Two things. Great. The colour words all end in an S because you've got more than one I. Apart from marron. Marron has no S. And that's because marron is actually a noun that we're using as an adjective. So marron actually means chestnut. And so that's why it doesn't have an S. It's just an exception to the rule, something you have to learn, I'm afraid. So have a go thinking about your own eyes. How would you describe your eyes? Okay. Tu es comment is the question. What do you look like? Tu es comment? J'ai les yeux. Moi, j'ai les yeux marrons. Et toi? J'ai les yeux. Have a go. Tu es comment? So to practice, it's quite good if you can get some images, maybe pictures of things that children are into. Here's one of Harry Potter. You could stick them up on the board and ask the children what colour eyes he has, okay, and pretend to be him, yeah? J'ai les yeux. So if you say a sentence, they will then just have to say yes or no, oui or no. J'ai les yeux noirs. J'ai les yeux, oui ou no. J'ai les yeux marrons. Oui ou non? And they have to guess. That's the simplest game because then they're not saying anything in French. They can just use their hands or simply say oui ou non, but they don't have to say a full phrase. Another way of playing that game is that you choose one learner. A learner comes up to the board, points to the image that's on the board, and the children all know that image. You, as the teacher, hide your eyes, you don't see it, okay? And you then have to guess. J'ai les yeux bleus. And they're going, oui ou non. J'ai les yeux marrons. Oui ou non. Okay, and then a different learner can come up. With older children, the children could be the teacher and do saying the French. And again, then if you've got pictures, the children can bring pictures in, can do that activity in groups or in pairs. Or if you've got puppets or dolls, you can do it with puppets or dolls. Okay. There's definitely a progression. If you would just ask learners tu es comment and ask them to describe their eyes, that's pretty scary. So we wouldn't start with that. You maybe would give a choice of two things first of all. Okay. So j'ai les yeux, here this person's got blue eyes. J'ai les yeux noirs ou j'ai les yeux bleus? Bleu. Très bien. J'ai les yeux bleus. And if you always put the thing that's the answer second, that's the last thing the children have heard, and then they're more likely to remember that, okay? Then you can progress and put the answer first. For instance, here we go, let's use this one. Tu es comment? J'ai les yeux noirs ou verts? Noir ou vert? Noir. Très bien. J'ai les yeux noirs. Now, the children might not give the whole answer. They might just say one word, and you can repeat back with the full answer. And there's another way of differentiation. The children that are more comfortable can give the whole answer. And they might not need that level of support, so you could just ask them, tu es comment? J'ai les yeux. You might give them the first bit to start them, or you might just ask them to answer. And you might have this level of support on the board to help them. So that's a couple of games there, okay? So guessing game, yes and no, and questioning choice of two. Okay, let's move on to hair. J'ai les cheveux, les cheveux. Notice it's les because you don't just have one single strand of hair, you have lots of hair. J'ai les cheveux. And let's look at the colors. So, j'ai les cheveux bruns, brun. When we're looking at hair, brun is actually black. Don't ask me why, that's just the way it is. J'ai les cheveux châtains. So, châtain is the word that we use for brown. Okay. Châtain. J'ai les cheveux blancs. Blanc looks like the English word blonde. J'ai les cheveux roux. Roux. Similar to the color red, but in French we use that for talking about generally people who are red-headed. Okay, so a full different spectrum of colors there. So, et toi? Have a go seeing if you could say what your hair is. J'ai les cheveux. Cheveux, what would you say? Fill it in. J'ai les cheveux. Très bien. And I would do that with the whole class. Right, everybody, all together, just shout out your answer to this. J'ai les cheveux. And everyone shouts their colour at the same time. Okay? Just to make them feel a bit more confident. We can say the words in different ways. J'ai les cheveux bruns. Like a witch. Like a ghost. J'ai les cheveux blancs. We can say them slowly. J'ai les cheveux roux. Or quickly. J'ai les cheveux châtains. J'ai les cheveux châtains. Okay, and the children can have fun doing it in different voices as superheroes or whatever. Okay, good fun. If you've got some wigs, you pop on some different wigs. Get some children up at the front of the classroom wearing different wigs, or if not, just with different hair. And you could see if you can say them correctly, okay? So the teacher might say and point to a child, j'ai les cheveux roux, and the children would say, non. J'ai les cheveux blancs, oui. You can also play a game where the children repeat if you're saying the correct thing, and if you're saying the wrong thing, they don't say it. It's called Duncan's game. And you can do this either with the phrases written on the board for older children who are reading, or with pictures, or with actual people standing in front of the class. So, j'ai les cheveux blancs. Repeat with me. J'ai les cheveux blancs. Oui, I'm saying the right thing, so you repeat it. J'ai les cheveux blancs. J'ai les cheveux bruns. J'ai les cheveux bruns. Très bien. Well repeated, because I said it. J'ai les cheveux roux. J'ai les cheveux roux. Ah, no one should be repeating it. If you repeated it, that's wrong because it's not red-headed, so I get the point. If you didn't repeat it, you get the point. So it's the class beat the teacher. Let's have a look at how we talk about our height. So we can use two different expressions, okay? So je suis grand or grande. Je suis petit or petite. Have a wee think. What do you think grand and petit mean? Think about knowledge of English. What words they sound like, prior learning. Where have you seen them before? Might have seen them when you're describing animals, for instance. Okay, that's right. Grand. If you think of the word great in English, if something's great, it could be amazing, but he could be a great person. Like it could be somebody that's really famous, that's well known, that's kind of big. If we're thinking sort of, I know it's a bit of a reach, but they might get that. Petit is small. So again, I would use things to show them that. This is petit, a little puppet, petit, and this one is grand, grand, grand et petit. Using items can really help. Okay, and I would ask the learners, why do you think they're spelled differently? Or why do you think they sound differently? Je suis grand, and je suis grande. Je suis petit and je suis petite. Petite et grande. Why do they sound differently? They might understand, they might have remembered it from colours, okay? You can also make it more obvious by doing something like this. Je suis petit. Je suis petit. Je suis grande. Why does she say grande and he say petit? Well done. Feminine, so she gets an extra E. Girls like accessories, it's the way I often say it. I don't mean to be saying anything specifically about boys and girls, but that's just an easy way to remember it. So, and boys, no E, no extra things for you boys, I'm afraid. Okay, girls, you get an extra E. Okay, you're lucky. Okay. And what do we think je suis means? Does anybody know where je suis comes from, what it means? Okay, so je suis means I am. It comes from the verb être, to be. It's an irregular verb, which means that it doesn't have a set pattern that we can learn easily. Just like in English, I am, you are, he is, and the infinitive is called to be. So totally different. They don't look and sound anything like each other. Okay, so that's more for your information. I wouldn't go into that detail unless you had older learners. But you could get boys up at the front of the class and girls looking at je suis grand, je suis petit, different animals that are masculine and feminine, and just playing around with it. Okay. Oh, I seem to have... Okay. Tu es comment? Tu es comment? That's the question. Tu es comment? What do you like? And here's an example of a sort of form that you could get your learners to fill in, a fact file, a gap fill activity. So the start of the sentence is there and you're giving them a word bank to help them. Je suis, I am, je suis, and then there are 4 options, grand, grande, petit or petite. What would be the most appropriate one? And you might use project this and use an example on the board and fill it in for yourself with your class and trying to explain why and get them to explain why. And then look at the colour of the eyes and the hair. And again, all the words are there. Now that might be too many words for some children, so you might need to just, have 2 different options, 2 different colours, for instance. Or you might have to have all the words and you might have to have the English or images to go with it, depending on the level of support that your learners need. Now, you might not get children to write this out. This might just be something that they say to prepare a short presentation about themselves. They might copy it, or they might try and write it from memory. So it just depends on the level of your learners. But they could create a little fact file, draw a picture of themselves, or get a photo of themselves and add that and make a little ID card, for instance. Okay, so just a summary of the different activities that we've done. We've looked at different ways of introducing vocabulary using people, but you could do it with images or flashcards. The yes-no game, the choice of 2 answers. The guessing game, where you're hiding and trying to guess what the children have said or the children are guessing. We haven't mentioned these last couple, so splat. The way splat works is you maybe have images on the board or phrases or words, and you say one and you have 2 children at the front of the class and the children have to splat, they have to touch the right word then when you said it, or the right image. So 2 children are working against each other. I always do the best of 3 because I think 1 doesn't sound, they don't really get much of a chance otherwise. And I get the class to say the words that have to be splatted. Hot seating, now it might be where you get children up at the front and you ask them a question and they have to respond. Bingo, quite simply, the children can have like a whiteboard and draw a simple grid, and they can either write words in it or pictures, like in English or in French. You would say an expression, j'ai les yeux verts, and if they have it, they cross it off. You can also turn that into Pictionary, where you say an expression and they just have to draw it and write the colour to show they've understood it. Line bingo works well with older children, where you have a piece of paper that you fold up, maybe into 6 sections. The children draw or write a phrase in each of the boxes of their choice on the topic. You then say a phrase. If the phrase comes up and it's at either end of their piece of paper, they can rip that piece of that little end bit off, okay? And you're trying to get to the middle where they've ripped their whole piece of paper. And we've already talked about a fact file or an ID card. But you could change that, and it might not just be about themselves. It might be about a famous person, maybe a famous French person. And then that could be used for another lesson where they have to guess who it is. So there can be a little bit of research done there, cultural information. These activities work well all the way through, from lower school all the way through to upper school, just depending on how much support you give them and how much you're expecting them to either say, read, write, or listen to, developing those skills. Bien, bonne chance, au revoir.